Hello, hello, hello. Oh, there we go. We're good. We're set. Get the microphone in front of me. How are we? It's been a few hours. It's always strange, isn't it, with the sprint races? Like I'm back, like a couple of hours later. I have debated whether or not to just like do something in the gap in between. Although it's quite nice. Like today, I got to go and have some dinner, sort some various bits and pieces out. Went for a little walk. You gotta make sure that you're in the right mindset, ready for a sprint race. And let me get it up in front of me. Got about 15 minutes left to go before we have 24 laps of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix track. There's a replay of that Esteban Ocon Fernando Alonso crash. But hello, everybody. Hello, Antonio. Smiley Brandon. Abused cow. Ariosto there as well. Checo, please no dive bombing into turn one. As long as he takes out Verstappen, I don't mind. Hello from Stockport. Hello, Ian, mate. How are we all doing? Richie is here as well. And as I said, we're about 15 minutes out. And Esteban Ocon, blunt, I would say. Hello, Omar. How are we doing? Blunt, I would say, Esteban Ocon in the little interview there with Sky. Just kind of getting over the fact that he came to a collision with Fernando Alonso. It's interesting that I feel like of the two drivers, in my opinion anyway, Esteban Ocon is more to blame. But Fernando Alonso was very calm about it. Fernando Alonso was like, well, it happened. We crashed. I couldn't do anything about it. Esteban Ocon was very quick to blame Fernando Alonso and say, if Fernando Alonso wasn't there or if Fernando Alonso was further right, then none of that would have happened. So I don't know. I don't know where I sit on it. It's a bit of a weird one from my perspective. Hello, Sally. We're ready and raring to go. As I said, about 12 minutes or so left until we get underway. 24 laps is quite a few laps around this Grand Prix circuit. I know that it's a shorter lap, but it does give a lot of opportunity for overtaking. I think that's why the Brazilian Grand Prix works so well. With it being a shorter track and with it being designed in the way that it is, there are so many good overtaking opportunities. I feel like down towards turn one is the obvious one, a little bit of DRS as well, but it is curved around towards turn one, so you do need a little bit of a slingshot around. And then obviously down towards turn 4 as well, another DRS zone. In fact, I can pop the trackboard up. Yeah, 2 DRS zones, 2 sort of main overtaking opportunities, I guess you'd say. But even so, through that middle sector, it's quite nice. It's like quite a nice middle sector to keep right on the tail of the car in front, especially if you've got a car with a little bit more downforce. You can really stick it to the car in front, and then once that DRS launches you in towards that first sector or in towards the second sector, they're seeing Aston Martin putting Fernando's car still back together again, but he is going to be prepared for this Grand Prix. Well, sprint race, I should say, not Grand Prix. AlphaTauris looked to have good pace in the sprint shootout. Most certainly they did. So we have a little rundown of the qualifying board very swiftly. Lando Norris at the top of the sprint race. Aston Martin engineer being interviewed in some way. I thought there was a little bit one. After the Tilke madness pass, traditional circuits finally recognized as great ones. Yeah, that's very true. Unfortunately, like I get that Tilke was pretty good at designing Formula One racing circuits, but he did do it a bit too often, in my opinion. There's a lot of circuits out there that are Tilke designed, or if they're not even Tilke designed, they've taken a lot from Tilke's designs in the past anyway. Have a feeling there's going to be real chaos ahead, says Juan. Maybe. But as I was saying, Lando Norris starting from the top of the grid with Max Verstappen beside him down in towards turn 1. I do feel like it's going to be tricky for Lando Norris to really hold on to that lead with Max Verstappen right beside you in a Red Bull. We just know that the Red Bull race pace is something a little bit different. And where we have seen Max Verstappen not win Grand Prix since the summer break, so I'm thinking Singapore and the Qatar sprint race, he's been a bit further back. You know what I mean? Like, starting from second place is effectively starting from pole position, really. I know you're on the dirtier side of the track, but you've got nothing in front of you. And Max Verstappen's going to be up the inside, I'd imagine, straight away into the first corner. Lando Norris most certainly has a chance to win this sprint race, but it's going to be very, very tough. And he'll need something to run his way. He'll need Max Verstappen to maybe make a little bit of a mistake. He'll need Max Verstappen to maybe not get away as quickly as he normally does, which is something that Max Verstappen has been working on, which is a problem. Like, Max Verstappen used to be pretty slow off the line, wasn't the best driver off the grid, but has been working on that recently and has kind of got better and better at it. Like, I can't remember the last time Max Verstappen had a poor start. In fact, in Mexico, he had a sensational start, which got him into the lead of the Grand Prix and then just disappeared from there. So Lando Norris in a tricky situation, I would say. Weather looks clear, though. Lovely and sunny. It was yesterday that was higher likelihood of rain. I think when I last checked, today was only like a 20% chance of rain. And that looks to be completely gone. The skies are clear and blue and sunny. Excited or nervous? Bit of both. Little bit of both. Little bit of both, Rob. But Sergio Perez and George Russell starting from the second row of the grid. Of course, George Russell won the sprint race here last year and won the Grand Prix last year as well. So George Russell trying to go back-to-back in Brazil, which would be very, very impressive considering Mercedes have won one race since the start of the 2022 season. If they could make that two, and they're both in Brazil, and they're both George Russell, I think that would be a little bit of a dagger to the heart of Lewis Hamilton, because Lewis Hamilton been trying so hard to win everywhere, and he loves Brazil more than anywhere else, you would say, apart from possibly Silverstone. But George Russell has the upper hand in terms of the qualifying pace as Hamilton starts just behind him in 5th place. Yuki Tsunoda might have an engine failure and he might crash. Where on earth you got that from, Smiley? But he is there in 6th place as Yuki Tsunoda. Points on offer for the AlphaTauri driver. Especially because Daniel Ricciardo picked up 6 points last time around as well. So Yuki Tsunoda looking to pick up some more points, kind of edge away from Daniel Ricciardo in the standings if he can. Hello, JB, mate. How are you? Good, good, good. Charles Leclerc in 7th place, Daniel Ricciardo in 8th. Interesting that the Ferraris aren't as high up as I maybe expected them to be. I thought Charles Leclerc, considering the qualifying lap that he put in on Friday, was sublime. I figured he might be a little bit higher up, but it was the fact that they didn't have a fresh set of soft tyres that killed them when it came to the sprint race. You know, Charles Leclerc starting high up in the Grand Prix, but starting lower down in the sprint race because he decided to use up that extra set of soft compound tyres. Same with Carlos Sainz, used that extra set of soft compound tyres in free practice. And both of the Ferraris starting, well, around the point scoring positions. Obviously, Charles Leclerc would pick up 2 points, finishing in 7th. Carlos Sainz, though, trying to get a point that would separate him from Fernando Alonso in the standings. Is ahead of Fernando Alonso because of that victory, but they are equal on points right now, the two Spaniards. Carlos Sainz would be very happy to just move ahead, actually, on points. Then Oscar Piastri rounds out the top 10. Pretty poor qualifying performances, I would argue, from Oscar Piastri. Very lucky to get through Q1 earlier on this morning, in my opinion. And then just about managed to get through into SQ3 as well. It's a little bit tough for Piastri. Obviously, hasn't been here before. Still trying to learn quite a lot. But since Qatar, maybe hasn't been 100% certain inside of that McLaren car, which is you know, fair because he is a rookie, but maybe delivering a little bit less than expected since then. Then the two Hasses, 11th and 12th place, with the race being a little bit shorter, only 24 laps, hoping that the tyre degradation on the Haas won't be too much of a factor, but we do know that they drop backwards fairly heavily when that tyre degradation does come in, and it is looking quite warm, so it'll be interesting to see how the Hasses do. I'm not 100% sure we'll see them move forwards unless something happens to the guys in front, but I could definitely see them moving backwards if things don't go their way. Pierre Gasly and Valtteri Bottas starting 13th and 14th. Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon, after their coming together in SQ1, will actually start side by side, which just has another collision written all over it, doesn't it? You know, the two of them, not massive friends after their time at Alpine together. Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon definitely were not friendly at the end of that 2022 season, wasn't it? Was last year. I keep forgetting that Fernando Alonso has only been in that Aston Martin car 1 year. It does feel like this year has been so juxtaposed with so much good and so much bad. It's felt like he's been there for an absolute age. This sprint format sucks. Drivers and especially rookies don't get enough time to know the track and don't perform at their best. I feel like that is true. We definitely still need some form of change, don't we? And there's been a lot of discussion around the sprint races and around how they could change for the 2024 season. I know that Charles Leclerc said that he doesn't want any more. So 6 sprint races would be the absolute maximum that they would be kind of happy to have on the calendar. But I think at the same time, if they can sort out the format, then maybe they can add a few more. Why are they showing these people doing flips in front of Formula 1 drivers and just catching Formula 1 drivers off guard, effectively? 2 Mercs need to move up. I mean, 4th and 5th behind the 2 Red Bulls. I agree, Alex. They'd love to, but how? How? The sprint for... I just feel like it needs zhuzhing up a little bit. It's too similar. It needs to be its own thing. Like, they've tried to separate it out by putting it all on a Saturday. Which is absolutely fine by me. Like, I don't mind there being a sprint Saturday, but then make it different. Because at the minute, it's just like a small qualifying and a small race. So the sprint is just worse than both of those things. But if it was its own format, if it had its own thing, something else going on, I think it's going to be interesting to see Piastri fighting the Ferraris. Needs a great exit, though. Yeah, that's very true. The Ferrari, very good in a straight line. Anyway, we got to Alonso and Ocon. I feel like that's going to be some high tension between those two going down in towards turn 1 in 15th and 16th. Lance Stroll starts 3rd in the Grand Prix, starts 17th in the sprint race. Zhou Guanyu in 18th. And then the 2 Williamses at the back of the pack. Sprint races needs zhuzhing up. That's a thing, isn't it? Zhuzhing? Have I made that up? Maybe. I love making up a phrase. You know this, Taryn. You talk to me more than anyone else in this. Single quali session, reverse grid for sprint. What was it that Carlos Sainz said? Reverse championship order in the sprint is what he said, which I think could also be very, very exciting. I feel like one-shot quali, everybody has talked about so much of the time. Also worth throwing in there. There you go. There's the Hasses on the medium tyre. I know that their tyre degradation isn't great. Wasn't expecting them to go onto the medium tyre, though, if I'm honest. Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, those top 5, all on slightly used soft compound tyres. So scrubbed soft compound tyres for them, which does give Yuki Tsunoda quite a nice run at them. It's going to have some fresh soft compound tyres. The extra grip off the line. If Yuki Tsunoda can get the launch, could be looking to move forwards a couple of places at the beginning of this Grand Prix sprint. Daniel Ricciardo is what I was also going to say. Daniel Ricciardo also on a nice one. Talk to you almost every day. Does feel like it, especially on a sprint weekend. On a sprint weekend, it is 3 days in a row. Plus, I suppose comments, actually. And yeah, maybe I do talk to most of you guys pretty much every day. Sainz and Piastri on some used soft compound tyres as well. As I said, the Hasses kind of stand out a little bit on the medium tyres in 11th and 12th. Gasly on some used softs. Bottas with a fresh set. Joe with the fresh set as well. Alonso, Ocon, Stroll slightly scrubbed, Albon slightly scrubbed, and Logan Sargent going for the medium compound tyre. If it's softs for the sprint, one stop for the race, you'd think that, but last year we saw two stop strategies, and generally speaking, we've seen pretty much a mirror of last year's strategies in this year's Grand Prix as well, especially since the summer break when Pirelli slightly adapted the tyre compounds, because we were seeing, remember earlier on in the year where we were seeing literally like 0 stop strategies going all the way to the end. What was it? Baku, where Ocon nearly killed some journalists because he had to pit on the final lap of the Grand Prix, and everyone had just kind of forgotten about that and assumed that Esteban Ocon was just going to disqualify himself by not using 2 sets of compounds. If they can make the top 15 in the race worth some points in the sprint top 10, yeah, I do like the extended points thing. I know I made like a little video on that discussing kind of the point situation and how I feel like the points should go a little bit further down the grid. It's just something that you see in a lot of other motorsports. Like, it's not like I'm saying it because I don't like the way Formula 1 does it. I think the way Formula 1 does their points, like, works for Formula 1, and Max Verstappen would still be the champion, however the points were handed out. But I do feel like points down a little bit further would just make those battles just more interesting to talk about. You know what I mean? Like, especially because you can often have a really good battle for like 12th or 13th. And like, you can talk about it. You can be like, oh my God, these two were going at it. Gasly and Bottas were battling for 13th all Grand Prix long. And I just didn't know who was going to come out on top between those two. But when you bring that up, people just aren't bothered because there's nothing actually there. It doesn't matter in terms of the standings, whether they finish 12th or 13th. It just means that there's more talking points if you add more points. So that would be my point of view on it anyway. Take the points too low, you end up with some points just for finishing, although 15th is probably about. I feel like if you DNF, you shouldn't get points, right? It's like IndyCar. IndyCar gives points to everybody, but if you don't finish, you don't get any points. Like, it should also sort of boost up those teams that are able to make cars that are consistently finishing Grand Prix. Like, imagine if Haas finished every single Grand Prix. I know that they've got like 12 points or whatever. And then AlphaTauri finished 4 Grand Prix, but managed to get the same amount of points. It would just feel a bit harsh. You know what I mean? How long till the race start? We're watching the formation lap as we speak. We'll move over to the slightly more detailed board in a moment, but just waiting for the final cars to make their way around turns 13 and 14. Should we get to some detailed look? Oh, can I have a little moment? There we are. Hearing those radio messages from the drivers now. The last checks for these Formula 1 drivers. As you can see, Logan Sargent and Alex Albon just coming around the final corner now for the Williams setup. Don't worry. It's all right, guys. Green flag, though. 5 red lights. And here we go once again. It's Brazil, the final sprint of the 2023 season. And it's Max Verstappen and Lando Norris side by side down towards turn 1. Max Verstappen goes up the inside, and it's already Verstappen up into the lead. There is George Russell ahead of Sergio Perez as well. Lewis Hamilton remains in 5th. Charles Leclerc has made up a position on Yuki Tsunoda. Oscar Piastri also jumping up into 7th place. Yuki Tsunoda really struggling off the start. Lewis Hamilton is going to go around the outside of Sergio Perez, and both of them are up. Oscar Piastri goes wide. Yuki Tsunoda back ahead of Piastri, dropping all the way down the grid now. Oscar Piastri, I think that might be a puncture or possibly some damage for the McLaren car. Oh no, maybe not. Back up into 10th. Maybe the board just had no idea where Oscar Piastri was for a second. George Russell on Lando Norris now, and George Russell up into second place. Lando Norris caught sleeping at the beginning of this Grand Prix. He goes from first to third, and now Lewis Hamilton looking at the back of that McLaren car. One lap down, and already a huge change in the standings as Norris drops 2 positions. Lewis Hamilton ahead of Sergio Perez now as well. Charles Leclerc in 6th, Tsunoda 7th, and Sainz in 8th place, rounding out the points positions. Ricciardo and Piastri 9th and 10th. Here goes Fernando Alonso down the inside of Nico Hülkenberg. And not quite this time for the Aston Martin car. Esteban Ocon right under the rear wing of Fernando Alonso once again. We've already seen them come together once today. Is it going to happen once more? Why does nobody ever get as far forward in their grid box as Max? Maybe just Max knows that he can risk it. Why are Haas on the mediums? They're obviously really worried about their tyre degradation in comparison to the rest of the field, which has been a weak point of the Haas car all season. So it kind of makes sense that they have taken a little bit of a cautious approach, I would say, in the Haas team. Max Verstappen, though, see, that's what I mean. Starting on second place, you actually have the inside run at turn 1. And he was up alongside Lando Norris. Lando Norris having to brake that little bit earlier because Max Verstappen takes the dominant position on the corner. And here's Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez going at it. Sergio Perez having a little look at the Mercedes. Not this time around for the Mexican, but Verstappen now edging away from George Russell. Lando Norris also dropping to around about a second behind Russell, still within DRS though, and the DRS wide open on Sergio Perez's car in 5th place. He's just a couple attempts behind Lewis Hamilton. Charles Leclerc also looking at this battle and hoping for an opportunity to get ahead. Carlos Sainz fairly comfortably behind Yuki Tsunoda at this point. The Japanese driver holding off the Spaniard with those slightly fresher soft compound tyres. Daniel Ricciardo looking at the back of his teammate's car, hoping that he can get up into the points. It would mean that he would get ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in the championship if he could get ahead of Yuki Tsunoda and pick up a point here. Oscar Piastri in 10th place, still looking at the back of Daniel Ricciardo and frustrated at the back of Daniel Ricciardo after making up a couple of positions at the top. The medium tyres are also fastest at the last of the sprint. That is very true if the soft compound tyres do start to fall off a cliff. And Sergio Perez goes for the move on Lewis Hamilton. Whoa! And gets ahead of Lewis Hamilton before they even hit the braking zone. That is the DRS advantage of that Red Bull car. Sergio Perez absolutely launching himself past Lewis Hamilton. But Lewis Hamilton not going to let it lie. Also has a look at the Red Bull down towards turn 4. And Sergio Perez makes him wait. Although that opens the door for Charles Leclerc. And Charles Leclerc's gone wheel to wheel with Lewis Hamilton now into the middle sector. And unfortunately for Leclerc, the door is just closed by Hamilton. But Perez, Hamilton and Leclerc getting side by side with one another throughout those corners. All the way down from sort of 2 all the way up until 6. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton looking at the back of Sergio Perez's rear wing. Sergio Perez, because of that battle, dropping well off the back of Lando Norris, which plays into Lewis Hamilton's hands. Sergio Perez no longer within DRS range of the McLaren. Will the Mercedes be able to use its DRS advantage as we go down the pit straight? Fernando Alonso has finally got that move done on Nico Hülkenberg as well, down towards the back of the grid. Alex Albon fighting with Valtteri Bottas. There's Lando Norris. Lando Norris with a move. And he's in front of George Russell. And after losing that position at the beginning of the Grand Prix, the DRS on the McLaren helps. But now the Mercedes can strike back. And we see George Russell, the rear wing, wide open. But not enough straight line speed to get up alongside Lando Norris. Now the pressure is on Norris to close the gap to Max Verstappen. Verstappen 1.4 seconds ahead of the McLaren now. George Russell still looking at the back of the at the back of the McLaren car. And the Mercedes will be looking to use its DRS as they exit this middle sector. The laps are coming thick and fast here, and so are the overtakes. Everyone having a go at one another at the beginning of this Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc still within DRS range of Lewis Hamilton, although Hamilton dropping outside of DRS range of Sergio Perez. Yuki Tsunoda still in 7th place and still looking at the back of Charles Leclerc's car. We know that the Ferrari hasn't been exceptional in terms of its tyre wear over the course of this season. And Yuki Tsunoda is on the radio. Leclerc is moving under braking, says Yuki Tsunoda. Charles Leclerc has a little look at Lewis Hamilton. Yuki Tsunoda also. Fernando Alonso looking to try and get past Kevin Magnussen. Esteban Ocon is back behind the Aston Martin as he moves past Nico Hülkenberg down in towards turn 1. And here we go then. Fernando Alonso right underneath the rear wing of Kevin Magnussen. I don't think that Aston Martin could have got any closer as they enter the DRS zone. And the Aston Martin gets ahead up into 12th place for Fernando. Esteban Ocon, here's the replay of the move on Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg had DRS himself, but Esteban Ocon, with the drag reduction system wide open, gets a little bit of a toe from Hülkenberg round the outside at turn 1, and the Frenchman gets the move done. The Mercs are slow. Yeah, they're not looking great in terms of race pace. George Russell now dropping massively off the back of Lando Norris, and Lewis Hamilton also falling well off Sergio Perez. Albon on the radio. Oil coming out the back of Valtteri's car, says Alex Albon on the radio. I'm sure Alfa Romeo will take a little look at that as quickly as they possibly can. Logan Sargent with a track limits violation as we head into lap 7 of the Grand Prix. Let's have a little look at the sector timings so far in this one as the field starts to spread out just a touch and see where people are gaining that advantage. You can see the DRS, especially with those Ferrari-powered cars, super, super effective in that first sector. That rundown from 3 to 4, allowing those Ferrari cars to look very, very quick. Bottas, Hülkenberg, and Leclerc, the top 3 in that first sector. Yuki Tsunoda also with DRS just behind Charles Leclerc, getting right up there. Gasly also looking very quick in the first sector as he closes in on Oscar Piastri. The McLaren won't be very happy to see that, considering Piastri's 17th fastest in that first sector. And then in the final sector is where it counts as well, down towards turn 1. You can see Sergio Perez with a real advantage and will be closing in now on George Russell. 6/10 the gap to the Mercedes car, and that is coming in that final sector, because as much as George Russell has been best in the middle sector, Sergio Perez now looking at George Russell, and the DRS on that Red Bull makes it look fairly comfortable as Sergio Perez moves up into 3rd place and back onto the podium scoring positions. George Russell, though, not giving up this podium this time around. Wheel to wheel with Sergio Perez down towards turn 4, and George Russell comes right back at the Red Bull. Sergio Perez got the position down towards turn 1, DRS wide open for the Mercedes, and George Russell back up into 3rd place. Lewis Hamilton still in 5th for the Mercedes, now a couple of seconds off the battle between Perez and Russell. If they can cause each other a little bit of a headache, maybe allow Lewis Hamilton to close that gap a touch. Charles Leclerc has also dropped out of DRS range of the Mercedes. Yuki Tsunoda within DRS range of the car in front. So Sergio Perez and Yuki Tsunoda are the only guys in the point scoring positions that are looking to move forward anytime soon. Although Carlos Sainz has also just closed in to the back of Yuki Tsunoda. Soft compound tyres possibly starting to get a little bit sticky. Does make you wonder, is there anyone who might go for like a weird pit stop strategy? Just feel like there's not quite enough time, is there? Like, even if Max Verstappen pitted now, he'd still come at the back of the pack. Alex Albon looking at the back of Nico Hülkenberg and gets the move done. So Alex Albon up into 16th place. Lando Norris more than happy to focus in and see what he can do this time around. I think the radio messages will be quite telling at this point. A lot of cars in and around one another still, and the DRS still effective, especially down towards turn 1, it seems. Tyres are starting to stabilize for Pierre Gasly. Okay. Lewis Hamilton also wondering where on earth he is losing this time. George Russell just being warned about Sergio Perez, and the reason he's being warned is because Sergio Perez again down towards turn 1, the Mexican up the inside this time around as they go through the center S's together. Sergio Perez takes the lead, and can George Russell do it once again where he loses third place and then jumps back ahead down towards turn 4? DRS wide open once again for George Russell, but no around for the Briton. Sergio Perez right up behind George Russell. And a great move, you have to say, from Sergio. But tyre management is there. Sergio Perez, as soon as he's getting ahead of George Russell, told to manage those tyres. Gap 3.6 seconds. So Red Bull not expecting Sergio Perez to be able to close that gap. And therefore into tyre management for him. Carlos Sainz has also dropped off the back of Yuki Tsunoda, opening the door a touch for Daniel Ricciardo, who is right underneath the rear wing of the Ferrari. Just don't know if that AlphaTauri has got the straight line speed advantage required. Why is everyone obsessed with the track map? I'll do the track map when I'd like to do the track map. AlphaTauri is a legit challenge in the Ferraris. It really does. They're the only cars in the top 10, in the top 8, sorry, within DRS range. Yuki Tsunoda, the only car in the top 8 with DRS, and Daniel Ricciardo trying to break into it. Oscar Piastri also just tantalizingly close, though, behind. Pierre Gasly also slowing up. In fact, there's a little bit of a train behind Carlos Sainz, which you wouldn't really expect, especially considering that train consists of an AlphaTauri, a McLaren, an Alpine, and an Aston Martin. So, Carlos Sainz causing a little bit of traffic. You'll get the track map. Don't you worry. You'll get it when I say you can have it. Yeah, it is Carlos Sainz. You can just see coming around the final corner, 5 cars lining up. And Daniel Ricciardo going for it then, trying to break this traffic. And Daniel Ricciardo really wide round turn 1, but gets up the inside of turn 2. Nicely done from Ricciardo. Unfortunately, Carlos Sainz is going to be right underneath the AlphaTauri with DRS down towards turn 4. So this battle is not over by any stretch of the imagination. And actually, Carlos Sainz really comfortably ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. Feel like Daniel Ricciardo just lost way too much speed through those S's. Just as soon as he lost that pace round turn 2, where Carlos Sainz was able to hold on to a little bit more straight line speed. As soon as that DRS was open for Carlos Sainz, Daniel Ricciardo, a sitting duck, unfortunately. Still just Logan Sargent with the 1 track limits violation that we have seen so far in this Grand Prix. As we hit the halfway point. Lap 12 of 24 being completed. Daniel Ricciardo once again looking at the back of Carlos Sainz then. This is the real battle at the moment. Ricciardo again looking at the back of the Ferrari. Maybe this time decides to just tuck in under the rear wing of Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz moves over to the inside line. And now is Daniel Ricciardo going to have a go down towards turn 4 instead? Fernando Alonso is certainly going to have a go at Pierre Gasly, at least just behind the battle. And Gasly just about holds off Fernando Alonso. Everyone in this battle just trying to get up there towards that final point scoring position. Lance Stroll moves ahead of Esteban Ocon in 13th place now, Lance Stroll. Albon, the kind of only driver in that bottom 3 pack, escaping away from Kevin Magnussen. But 15th down looks pretty much settled to me, unless Nico Hülkenberg gets in front of his teammate, or Bottas and Joe could possibly swap around a touch. Lando Norris, though, maintaining the distance to Max Verstappen at least. Sergio Perez now 5.7 seconds off of second place. Ricciardo goes for the outside once again. Carlos Sainz up the inside, and Daniel Ricciardo this time decides to go for it and gets the job done into turn 1. I just think the problem he's going to have again is he's very slow through 2 and 3, whereas Carlos Sainz can still have a go, and Oscar Piastri wants to join the battle and had a little look, did Oscar Piastri, but Carlos Sainz able to hold on. The problem is Carlos Sainz is doing very well at defending here, because when Daniel Ricciardo does get past the Ferrari, he's pushed so far wide through the first sector, and Oscar Piastri is going to go for it. Wow, in the middle sector, Oscar Piastri, I think that was turn, 10? Just went for it, did Oscar. And moves up into 9th place, and that'll frustrate Daniel Ricciardo, because he'll want another run at Carlos Sainz, but will have to wait. And Oscar Piastri now looking to battle into the point scoring position. Fernando Alonso making a move as well. Goodness me, everyone's just making moves in the middle section. Everyone's done with trying to overtake down towards turn 1 by the looks of things. And here is Gasly and Alonso. Gasly with the better straight line speed in the Alpine, but Alonso's going to go down the inside. The AlphaTauri of Daniel Ricciardo slightly getting in the way. The Alpine of Gasly wiggling and squirming around turn 3. Fernando Alonso already alongside both of them with DRS. This could end in tears. They're getting very close to one another, and Lance Stroll's there as well. Up the inside, Gasly, but round the outside, Fernando Alonso makes it stick. And into 11th place. What a battle that was. Fernando Alonso just sticking that Aston Martin around the outside. Lance Stroll also looked to get involved in that battle. Russell on the radio. And Russell just can't quite get within any kind of touching distance of Verstappen, Norris, and Perez. I mean, Perez can't get within touching distance of Verstappen and Norris. They've just completely disappeared up the road between the two of them. Max Verstappen asking to push the high speed. Being told, look, Max, I've told you once, I'll tell you again, push the high speed. Lando Norris, though, still within touching distance, 1.6 seconds behind. Considering, Max Verstappen, usually at this point, comfortably ahead. I mean, it is 8.5 seconds, nearly 9 seconds ahead of his teammate. So that's usually how comfortable it is. Lando Norris did lose half a second last time out, though. Ooh. Verstappen clearly just unhappy to actually see a car in his wing mirrors. Not used to it as Max Verstappen at this point in a sprint race. Usually just all by himself. But can actually see another car on track, Max Verstappen. Lando Norris, though, I don't think can see Sergio Perez. No, gets all the way around turn 3 before Sergio Perez makes his way to turn 1. So these two are effectively all by themselves for the last 8 laps of this Grand Prix. But it does feel like a mistake from Max Verstappen would be the only way that Lando Norris would be able to effectively get back up into first place. Remember, he was down into third on the first lap of this Grand Prix, Lando Norris, but up into second once again, past George Russell in the Mercedes, who's now down in fourth. Lewis Hamilton in fifth, Charles Leclerc sixth. Also, sort of a couple of seconds separating those guys from one another. Yuki Tsunoda still with DRS to Charles Leclerc, but unable to close the gap. Oscar Piastri has fallen off the back of Carlos Sainz after that battle was heating up. Fernando Alonso, though, deciding he wants to have a go at Daniel Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo still within DRS of Oscar Piastri, but Gasly had DRS as well, and that didn't stop Fernando Alonso getting past the Alpine. There is a real train now behind sort of Sainz, Piastri. It's so weird that there's a Ferrari of Carlos Sainz that has a proper DRS train behind it. Hello. Morning. Yeah, 12:24. Ouch. What's happened till now? Max Verstappen took the lead. Some lovely little battles in the midfield. Ocon from Esteban Ocon goes into turn one, locks up, opens the door to Lance Stroll, and Lance Stroll takes it, moves around the inside. Stroll. Oh no, it's Pierre Gasly. Pierre Gasly with a lock-up. Alonso and Stroll then up into 11th and 12th place for the Aston Martins. Of course, still only the top 8 score points. So Carlos Sainz just about clinging on to that final point scoring position and slightly edging away from Oscar Piastri now. So it feels like the points are going to stay in the order that they are. Oof. Yeah, Gasly with that lockup. Just got through the S's a little bit wonky, and Lance Stroll took advantage. Daniel Ricciardo looking to try and get past Oscar Piastri once again. Piastri did really well to jump Daniel Ricciardo when he did, but Daniel Ricciardo was trying to get in front of Carlos Sainz at that point. Don't think they would have gotten points anyway. Yeah, not a great call from Haas. They were clearly just like really concerned about tyre wear. Or maybe want to hold on to a set of softs for tomorrow. It's the other thing that could run their way. Norris up in P2. Very happy indeed. I feel like, as I said at the start, Max Verstappen was going to always go up the inside to turn one. He needed Max Verstappen to have a poor start or make a mistake effectively in the first 2-3 corners, did Norris, to be able to really hold on to him. Instead, it was Lando Norris that fell down the order fairly swiftly. And he's done well to get back up into second place and hold off Sergio Perez by a considerable margin, although Sergio Perez has been managing his tyres since getting past George Russell, because the gap was already up to 3 seconds or so, now already up into 8 seconds. Lando Norris has dropped off the back of Max Verstappen now. Verstappen clearly moving up in power mode in that Red Bull after being told over the radio, and just extending that lead a touch to 2.5 seconds. Daniel Ricciardo, though, is the move on Oscar Piastri. Not this time. Let's see, then going down towards turn 4. Daniel Ricciardo peels out to have a look at the side of Oscar Piastri's car, but can't get past him this time around. Fernando Alonso as well. What are they talking about? Oh, Lewis Hamilton talking about the fact that he is 20 seconds off Max Verstappen. Yeah, the Mercedes just no race pace at all in comparison to where we probably expected them to be. I think if you asked the majority of people, especially after the last couple of races where we've seen Qatar, the Mercedes have a really good place. George Russell obviously making his way through effectively the entire field after that collision with Hamilton. Then in Austin, we saw they had really good pace until Lewis Hamilton was disqualified. Mexico, and Lewis Hamilton is now dropping back, and Charles Leclerc is going to have a go at the Mercedes, and Charles Leclerc gets the move done into turn 1. Is Hamilton going to have a go back towards turn 4? No, gets all out of shape. Opens the door to Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda's right alongside Lewis Hamilton as they go down towards turn 4. It's going to be whoever breaks latest. And Hamilton holds him off just. Yuki Tsunoda maybe just had that idea, lost out on points last weekend because of that collision with Oscar Piastri. Didn't want to lose out on points once again. But Hamilton with a real error through turn 1. Just completely lost the rear end of that Mercedes car. The rear tyres squirming around behind the Mercedes. And Lewis Hamilton, looking to hold on to the back of Charles Leclerc, disappeared into the distance and instead is now battling with Yuki Tsunoda, the Japanese driver. 3 laps left. Well, 2.5 to try and get in front. Here we go then, Yuki Tsunoda underneath the McLaren, DRS wide open. The AlphaTauri has better straight line speed, and Tsunoda's way past Lewis Hamilton even before they get to the start-finish line by the looks of things. And Daniel Ricciardo also coming to life in his AlphaTauri as well, moves up into 9th place. The AlphaTauri just holding onto its tyres that little bit better than, well, seemingly everybody. Obviously, Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo also on a fresh set of some soft compound tyres, so they are kind of 3 laps cleaner than everybody else. And that's really coming to fruition now. Yuki Tsunoda ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton from 5th to 7th in the space of a couple of laps. Wow. Low-key poor performance by Piastri. Team almost on pace with Verstappen. Oscar defending from AlphaTauri. Yeah, Piastri's had an odd weekend, I would say, so far. I haven't been impressed in any way, to be honest. Obviously, got through to Q3 yesterday, but made that mistake in Q3. You can blame the weather a touch for that as well. He wasn't going to go quick because he was out, second to last in front of Sergio Perez only. And then when we kind of look at the sprint qualifying this morning, if Ocon wouldn't have crashed into Alonso, I think he'd have probably gone out in SQ1. Just about managed to get through to SQ2. And then just also about managed to get into SQ3. And then hasn't moved. Started 10th, finished 10th at this point for Oscar Piastri. And is now actually under pressure from Fernando Alonso. So, yeah, there's something not quite right with Oscar Piastri this weekend. Do I have a setup tour? I don't, actually. I don't. Maybe in the off-season. I'll give a little rundown of... I mean, it's just a fairly generic desk setup. But, I mean, I can always give you a tour if you fancy it. Final lap of the sprint race then. Max Verstappen leading by 3.5 seconds. Sergio Perez then another 10 seconds, well, 9.2 seconds behind Lando Norris are our current podium positions. 10 seconds to George Russell, 3 seconds to Charles Leclerc, a second and a bit to then Yuki Tsunoda, who has closed the gap on Leclerc, but not to the point where he can really look at getting past. Lewis Hamilton is only looking at 1 point. Carlos Sainz, under pressure from Daniel Ricciardo, is the only opportunity. Fernando Alonso up the inside of Oscar Piastri, though. Piastri's going to have a little look back, though. And Alonso is going to try and get into the top 10 here. Piastri back in front. Piastri peels off to the left-hand side of the racing track to try and defend. Alonso just doesn't have the straight line speed advantage on those very old soft compound tyres. And he's going to have to deal with 11th place, the Spaniard. But here is Max Verstappen for another victory, another 8 points. And sees the checkered flag as a winner of the 4th sprint race this season for him. And Lando Norris, a 2nd place finish. Again, the bridesmaid and never the bride, Lando Norris, with 3rd being Sergio Perez, who picks up a few more points, tries to extend that lead in 2nd place over Lewis Hamilton, although the points available today not really going to make too much of a gap. With Sergio Perez 3rd, Russell 4th, Daniel Ricciardo trying to get past Carlos Sainz all the way down to the line and not able to do so. George Russell comes home 4th. Charles Leclerc 5th. Yuki Tsunoda holds on to 6th place. Lewis Hamilton then dropped off a huge cliff at the end there, just showing that actually this soft compound tyre and the Mercedes car not able to hold on to that pace. George Russell 12.5 seconds off Perez and Hamilton 5.5 seconds off Tsunoda. It's Mercedes nowhere right now. And then, yeah, Carlos Sainz, the final point scorer, just held off Daniel Ricciardo until the end. Had Oscar Piastri not made that move on Daniel Ricciardo, would the AlphaTauri have been able to get a point? Quite possibly. Carlos Sainz not really having the pace this time around. Piastri 10th. Alonso and Stroll 11th and 12th. Not bad for those two. Gasly and Ocon also side by side in the Alpines. Oh. Too much deg, says Lando Norris. Frustrated a touch. Hello, mate. Hamilton lost 5 seconds to Tsunoda in 2 laps. Yeah, that's what I mean. Those tyres absolutely just fell off of that Mercedes car. Like, might as well have not had tyres on at that point. Alex Albon comes home in 15th place. Considerable margin again to his teammate, although Logan Sargent on the medium compound tyres seemed an odd choice. Never got out of 20th place, Logan Sargent. Although a nice little battle between Joe, Hulkenberg, Bottas, Sargent at the end. But Magnussen 16th, Joe 17th, Hulkenberg 18th, Bottas 19th, and Logan Sargent 20th place. There we have it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me. Thank you for sticking around as it started hot. But the point scoring positions were fairly comfortable up until Lewis Hamilton then suddenly at the end decided to throw away a couple of positions and drop down to 7th place. Daniel Ricciardo looks close. Yuki Tsunoda will be very happy indeed with a 6th place and 3 more points. Just elongating a touch from Daniel Ricciardo. What is a kilometre, of course. Lando Norris congratulates Max Verstappen-ish. Just kind of gives him a little tap. A tap of congratulations from Lando Norris. But interesting to kind of see the pace of these cars again tomorrow. I feel like with the tyre degradation, with the pit stops, it will add a little bit more spice to it. I feel like we're going to see quite a few different strategies over the course of tomorrow's Grand Prix, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, all back live again tomorrow for the Grand Prix itself. So